Well, welcome to WrestlingAudio.com. My name's Dangerous Dave, and you're listening to Spare Change. This is going to be obviously a change. You've obviously been used to me watching along with you for these WWE tag team shows. If you have been watching along, I really appreciate some of the comments that I've got, some of the thoughts and feelings. A lot of them I kind of agree with looking back on them. I decided, obviously, because they were deciding to split up. I forgot that the women's one did this as well. The top 10 was split into two separate shows, 5 for each one. And I felt that one of the comments that was made to me was that there was a lot of dead air, and it was more a case of um, once you've made a comment on something, there's not really much else you can say, and unless there was someone specifically that I had opinions on, I didn't really have much else to say in regards to them. So it was kind of me, and especially trying to deal with Fandango. I can't believe that they got rid of him, and Tyler Breeze, the Breezango, or whatever it was, and it just, I mean, for me, it brings me back to those Sean Mooney days where, when Gene Okerlund and if you ever watch, I don't know if I think there are actually some on the network, some of those old like Coliseum tapes, and they would have these sort of backstage things like Todd Pentagon and Sean Mooney like chasing around. I'm trying to find the Undertaker and things like that, and they were so bad, and you could tell that they were really trying. These guys aren't actors, they're not actors. They're not. They're announcers. It's the equivalent of getting your local news reader to try and do some acting. It'll either be fantastic or it will be horrible. So as always, if you want to get in touch with me, easiest way is on Twitter at DGS6, Wrestling Audio website, Facebook page. There's lots of ways of getting in touch with me. So I'm going to be looking at the top 10 of the WWE Network's top 50 greatest tag teams in the WWE. Now, obviously, if you've been watching along with me, I ended with Demolition being number 11, which I absolutely still think, even after looking at this list now, I still cannot believe that they're not in the top 10 when you consider how significant as a team they were during that time. And I'm baffled by that. There were only a few in this list that I really had any issue with. A lot of the time it was me kind of, I don't want to say bitching, but it was me bitching about the fact that they kept on including factions. So I think they put DX in there, and obviously later on we're going to have the New Age Outlaw. DX were not a tag team; they were just two guys put together. It was a faction, and I think this wasn't the top 50 factions. I don't actually think they could probably do that without scraping the barrel, to be honest. Split the NWO. I think they tried to include the NWO in this. One of the there's like a little overview of like the top women's tag teams, which again, to me, I think that if I was a woman in a tag team right now, I would think that was an utter slap in the face, as if to say, yeah, we know you exist, but you're not quite as important anymore. I think the fact that, obviously I'm going to spoil it. I do apologize if you haven't watched the rest of the list. Spoiler alert, you have to go back and watch it. There is no women tag teams in this. I was actually really shocked by that. I thought the fact they didn't include the Golden Role Models, the Boss and Hug Connection, because first women's tag team, they were a great tag team, and that final year, I think it was last year, with Bayley being a heel, and them you could tease and so much, when's Sasha going to turn on Bayley? When's it going to happen? And then it was the other way around, and it was such a brilliant thing. And a lot of these, it's to do with time, and anyone who knows me knows I hate when people say, oh, you know what, that Godzilla versus Kong is the greatest film of all time, and you go, no, it's not. It's been released. You will never. You'll probably watch it maybe 2 or 3 times. You're not going to watch this film ever. Not in any kind of critical way. It's not going to be up for Oscars. It's not going to be. It's nothing like that. And it does bug me. I review a lot of films for various other places. My review is one of the places that I do it, and it's surprising when there's a lot of companies that are re-releasing things from like the 1920s and the 1910s, and silent films and things like that. And it's I just reviewed a film called The Man Who Laughs, and it's basically the inspiration of the Joker. And it's so surprising that a film that was like, I think it was about 100 years old, was still fantastic. In 2021. I mean, it just boggles my mind. But so I always think the time really does have an impact and a factor, and you know, and we'll just see how this goes. So anyway, on to the list here. Now I'm going to be going through the list, and then I'm going to be sort of trying to critique as best I can, because it is a bizarre top 10, if I'm being brutally honest. So at number 10 we have the British Bulldogs. Now, I'm not going to explode at this one, because I actually think this is probably the right place for the British Bulldogs. They only ever had one tag reign. It was a significant reign, nearly a year, but they were really only in existence for 2 years. I went on the network trying to find British Bulldog matches, and there's only about a couple of dozen. There's very few. There's only a few significant matches with the Bulldogs, and WrestleMania 3, I think it is, WrestleMania 2 and 3. So they were only really in existence for about, I say, 1 or 2 years. Yes, they had a massive impact. Individually they did. Dynamite Kid is basically the development of anything, cruiserweight, X Division, anything like that. You would look at the Dynamite Kid for that. British Bulldog was a fantastic big guy. As he came along, he was quick and athletic. Very significant, obviously Hall of Famer. It's always been sad that they didn't induct them at, just to try and get away from it. They should have inducted them as the British Bulldogs, not just for Davey Boy Smith. But I've no issue with them at number 10. The one I do have an issue with is number 9, Brothers of Destruction. Now, I will admit that Undertaker and Kane are two of the greatest characters, and obviously the Undertaker is one of the greatest of all time. I've always liked Kane. He was a great character, great great things all the way through his career. Even when he was awful, all the stuff with the mask, the thing with the voice box and all of that type of stuff. But I thought whenever these two got together, it was quite a spectacle. My only issue with this is they were never really a tag team. I mean, I did a little research. Obviously, they were tag team champions. They had 2 tag team reigns, but they only consisted between them of 41 days. Now, as I say, Demolition had the belt for over a year. And I think they had it 2 or 3 times as well. So I just don't agree with this one. I think if this had been further down the list with Jericho and things like that, then I'd have. But in the top 10, I just don't agree with this one. At number 8, we have the New Age Outlaws. Now, I love the New Age Outlaws. In fact, it's going to be surprising. What I'm going to be doing, I was going to be, sure I said at the beginning, I'm going to be going through this list, and I'm also going to be showing my list that I created before I saw this top 10. But I love the New Age Outlaws. They had the greatest entrance of all entrances. Ladies and gentlemen, boys, everyone knew that. And what I love about that is how, when they came back, it was like two years ago or something, it still felt brilliant. It felt fresh. It felt, even if it was PG to some extent, it was still fantastic. And I love the New Age Outlaws. Held the belt 6 times, and just no problem with that. They were a classic example of a tag team that deserved to be a tag team. Once they split up, it didn't, no combination. I know there was like Billy and Chuck, again, him in a tag team. Whenever they tried to do single stuff, it never really worked. At number 7, we have the Usos. And to be honest, the Usos kind of flew under my radar when I was thinking about them. And but I do think that they are a great team. Definitely one of the best teams at the moment. Obviously, they're not really doing much at the moment. And obviously with I forget if it's Jimmy or Jay's recent DUI. I don't know whether that's going to be something that's in the back burner for a while now. But the Usos were a great team. They really were. I thought whether they were I preferred them as the heels. When they were faces, they felt very forced. It was very, look at us, we've got the Samoan heritage. It was very in your face. Whereas as heels, there's just something about the character that came along. Now, at number 6, we have the Legion of Doom. Now, I know you're probably thinking that I'm going to start throwing things at a wall. How dare they not be in the top 5 and things like that. And I agree and I disagree with this. I think that the Legion of Doom in the WWE are okay. And I hate that I'm saying that, because if we were talking about the Legion, like the Road Warriors, the Legion of Doom, from AWA, from WCW, from NWA, so on and so on, in Japan, anywhere else, the Road Warriors are number one. Full stop, end of discussion. But we're only talking about WWE here. And in WWE, they really only had maybe 2 or 3 years. There's nothing significant. The only match that I recall them ever being involved with is the match with it was the Survivor Series, the where he was teaming with Texas Tornado and the Ultimate Warrior. But I mean, and I love the Legion. I love the music, the pop. I kind of feel that this is a little low for them. I think they should have at least hit the top five. But I understand why they're here, and I'm not going to explode as much as I want. It's kind of funny. I mentioned this a while back about how, obviously our table talk guy Devon, he was once asked, are you the greatest tag team of all time? And he went, no, it's the Road Warriors. And it's kind of nice that even he can admit that, despite all the accolades that he's had. It was really nice. If you've not seen any of the videos that Mo has put up recently with him at his, I don't want to say it's a ranch. I don't know, his house where he's got all the belts, and it just, I mean, I literally, I'm marking out for that. That was, whenever I see things like that, I do think that that's quite impressive and things. But I do think that the Warriors should have hit the top 10, the top five. That's good that if they hadn't hit the top 10, I would have probably thrown I was watching it on an iPad, I would have thrown it at the wall. The fact that they're not in the top five, I can kind of understand. And speaking of Dudley, number five, we have the Dudley Boys. Now, this one really, really confused me. Now, the reason being is that throughout the whole section that they talk about them, they more or less say that they're the greatest of all time, and yet they're number five. It made no sense to me. They were nine-time tag champions. Obviously, we're not including anything in ECW, TNA, anything like that. But they were the team that had the impact. A lot of the teams, we'll get to them in a second with like Edge and Christian and the Hardy Boys. These were the one that had the impact. They had people coming and wearing the camouflage and the tie dye and the glasses, and Devon get the that was how Devon get the tables. I mean, that was just perfect. I mean, they were I think they were one of the few tag teams that they were main eventers, the champion. I mean, they were just fantastic. As a team, whether we're talking about them in ECW, the Team 3D, or in WWE, in any, I mean, the fact that they came back and they were even better. I mean, just my brother, testify. I mean, they were a great team. I mean, I think this is probably a little low. I would have had them in my top three at least, and I think I actually do. But I'm glad they're in the top five. But I do think that this is a little low for them. Speaking of a little, no, not quite a little low, but yeah, number four, we got Edge and Christian. Now, I think for me, the thing with Edge and Christian is there were a lot. I think once Edge became the rated R superstar, I think it kind of overshadowed anything they did as Edge and Christian. Whereas a lot of teams, like say the Heart Foundation, for example, where it was just like one stand. Yeah, well, I suppose it was the same with that, but I just think I almost forgot that the Edge and Christian actually existed, because obviously Christian went off to do, obviously went off to TNA, and he went off to do the Peeps and all that type of stuff. But Edge and Christian as a team were great, but for me there was something about them where they didn't have something, and I don't know what it is. And they did obviously the flash photography, the 30-second pose or whatever it was, and they were a very funny team. And if you watch any of the Edge and Christian, the network stuff, it is funny, and they are very good at it. But I think in the ring they were just they were just there, and I hate to say that because they were just, some of them were fantastic and seeing Edge through, but there were just moments where they just sort of blended into everyone else, and I think it really didn't need them to split up for them to be as good as they are. At number three, you have the Heart Foundation. Um, I think that what I like about I mean, I think this is probably about the right spot for them. I was actually surprised that they weren't the number one, to be honest. But Heart Foundation, two tag team reigns. What I did like about this team, and I don't know whether they've done this before, they've obviously done it since, is that it was the classic example of the technical small guy and the big hard hitter. And you see it a lot, obviously, Chris Jericho and The Big Show. You see it in X-Pac and Kane. And there's a lot of teams like that, Andre the Giant and Haku, where it is like a massive guy who's going to do all the damage. And then it's usually the smaller guy who does all the flips and the pins and the splashes and things like that. And this was a very good team. I thought they were really, I love the energy of Jim Neidhart, and I loved Bret Hart putting the glasses on, the shade things on the kids, and I think they were a great team. And the heart attack move, the clothesline spine buster, was just such a great move. They used another move. I was watching it in there, but I think Demolition started using that as well, where he took an elbow off a backbreaker. But I love them as a team. It's surprising that they didn't include them sort of the mix up that they had, obviously, when 1997, when they seemed to try and get that back together. But I suppose that then becomes a faction, and obviously I don't want to. But I say number three. I say I was surprised this wasn't their number one, but no issue with that. At number two, we have the Hardy Boys. Now, this one is a really surprising one for me, and I would say they were 8-time tag champs, but they only really held the belt for 235 days. And I hate when that happens, when you go that they've held the belt eight separate occasions, and yet Demolition have held it more in just one single occasion. It just, I've said this time and time again, I hate when Charlotte does it, John Cena does it, Triple H does it, where it's, I've had the belt for, unless the reigns are significant, winning the belt 12 times really doesn't make any difference. But anyway, I think what I like about, number two, I think is again surprising. I think what it is about the Hardy Boys, in comparison to Edge and Christian, I would say, is that the Hardy Boys felt like the ones that were the innovators. They were the ones who were doing the swantons and the twist of fate. There were lots of jumping, and even though a lot of the other teams were doing similar things, it felt as though the Hardy Boys were the ones who amped it up. So it was off a table, it was off a ladder. If it was off the top of a cell, it was off the top of a cage. And they were a classic team together. They had great success separately. Well, Matt, once he did the broken Matt Hardy, Jeff, once he sort of got himself back together. But I just I always feel that they're a team. They are a very good team. And when I think it was that WrestleMania when they appeared at Ring of Honor the day before, never told anyone they were appearing, and then they turned up. And if you've ever seen anyone pop, if you've seen any of those videos of people reacting to that, it is just fantastic. I don't really. It's one of those things where I don't really have many significant moments with Edge and with the Hardy Boys, other than the fantastic matches they had, obviously, between the three of them. It's almost like it feels a shame that we can't just say number two is like a joint. It's Edge and Christian, Hardys and the Dudleys, because for that 2-year period, like WrestleMania, I think it was like No Mercy 99 up to WrestleMania 17, they were just three teams that just brought the best out of everyone. And at number one is the New Day. Yes, it is. And again, this almost leads me back to my original point about how it's time decides whether whether they are the greatest tag team of all time. The team have only really been in existence for about a little under 10 years, I think. They have held the belt for a significant period of time. Actually, when I counted it all up, it's 1,000 days. So I think the one thing I would say, and I hate when WWE does these lists because they never explain them and they just seem so arbitrary until you get to the last 20. where these people are just seems to be arbitrary. So you'll see people who have won the belt 10 times above people who've never held the belts at all. And it just, for me, I don't I agree and I disagree with this. I think that they definitely deserve to be in the top 10. I think they are a significant tag team. I would argue potentially that they're a faction when, like the Freebirds. But I suppose if I agree that the Freebirds are a tag team, I suppose I have to agree that the New Day are as well. I've never liked the New Day, really. Whether they were faces, whether they were heels, it didn't really matter. I never really liked them in any combination. I always felt that with Kofi, it held him back. I mean, I felt really bad. It was last year, the year before, when he spent all that time being WWE champion, and as soon as he lost it was like, right, get back to the New Day. And it just felt very much like that's all he could do, and it did feel quite. Quite sad in a way that's all that's all that he was able to do is you just get back to the New Day, and it's almost like the same thing with all of them. I don't actually know whether Xavier Woods has actually had any kind of singles run. Obviously, Big E has had various ones that have worked and failed. But I just think that I'm not sure about this as a number one. I think if this had been in 10 years' time, there was still a significant team and still had all that, I would have probably agreed with it. Just because, I mean, that is a significant amount of time that they've held the belts. Apart from in like the 70s and 80s when people held it for like 2 or 3 years, that is a significant. I mean, it is over 11 tag reigns, so they are like the most decorated in regards to that. But again, that just means that they've lost them 11 times as well. I forget if they are tag belt champions at the moment. So that's it. That's in regards to New Day. Now, in regards to how they created this list. Now, one of the things I was considering is whether it was to do with the amount of time, the amount of time they've had the belts and things like that. That might have had as consideration into it. If that was the case, and it's not, if it was the case, then the list would have gone. The Brothers of Destruction, just based on this top 10, it would be the Brothers of Destruction at 10, Edge and Christian at 9. Hardy Boys at 8, British Bulldogs at 7, the Dudley Boys at 6, the Road Warriors at 5, the Hard Foundation at 4, the New Age Outlaws at 3, the Usos at 2, and then the New Day at 1. So if it is in regards to how long they've held the belts, we can argue it is, the New Day is the right team for that. But as I say, before I started watching this, I did my own list. If you heard me on the last show, I was trying to even count 10 tag teams that was significant to me that hadn't been on. I found it really difficult, and I think it was because there were a few teams that I just, as I say, things like the Usos really did slip my mind. So here's my top 10, for better or worse. So my top 10, number 10, I have the British Bulldogs, and I think they're just a significant team. Again, they were a very good team. I mean, my list doesn't really go far from there. Well, number 9, I've got Demolition, which is to say, I think they were just a great WWE tag team. Number 8, I've got the Usos. Number 7, the New Day. Number 6, I've got the Road Warriors. Number 5, the Hart Foundation. Number 4, the Hardy Boys. Number 3, Edge and Christian. Number 2, the Dudley Boys. And in number 1, and this might be surprising for anyone, number 1 is the New Age Outlaws. And I think for me, they were the team that really brought me back. There were significant other things, but it really did bring me back to wrestling. I've always said, wrestling is cyclical for me. I watch it and then I kind of zone out, and it happened around about 90. I've been watching wrestling. I'm 40 now. I've been watching wrestling most of my life, and I remember started really watching it at 89, 90. But it was around about 93, 94 when the New Generation and Doink the Clown and Undertaker was being weird with his like face mask and everything like that. And I zoned out. It wasn't fun. It wasn't entertaining. It had some good entertaining wrestling, but I was really there for the storylines, and they just weren't there. And it wasn't a case of me going over to WCW or ECW or anything like that. This was, this was here in the UK. We didn't even know we knew WCW existed, didn't know anything about ECW. So I kind of just left. I left in '94. I went on to look at. I think I was in high school at the time, so I was studying. I was reading books. I was watching TV and film. I completely ignored wrestling until 1997, 98, when Austin came along and Undertaker and Kane and the Road Warriors were back, and we had the New Age Outlaws. And the New Age Outlaws, as I say, have one of the greatest entrances of all time. I mean, when people talk about great entrances, we talk about the Undertaker's dong, Kane coming out and doing the fire, the Legion of Doom. Oh, what a rush! But for me, just in regards to fan interaction and all these other things, the only other one I can think of, and I don't think they're actually in this, is the Kaz and Enzo. It's surprising that they're not in this list now. Now that I actually think about it, I think they had a great, almost New Age Outlaws entrance, and it's a shame that things happened with them. But the New Age Outlaws, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. It was the crowd ate it up, and we did it at home and everything like that, and it just made it made you want to get involved, and and that's what I wanted. I wanted the excitement. They were a great team together. Throughout that time. I mean, they had some great matches with Owen Hart and Jeff Jarrett, who again not included on here, which is a shame because they were a great tag team as well. And just the inclusion to DX was fantastic, and just there's just so much that they did at that time when they were the McMahon Helmsley era. They were against the Radicals, which again probably never going to include in something like this, but a great team from them as well. And I think that they were just one of the most significant teams. They won the PWI Tag Team of the Year, I believe it was. And actually, I think, and they held the belt for 637 days, over 6 reigns. I mean, there's nothing, you can't say that they're not a significant tag team. So that's my thoughts in regards to that, and it seems almost apt that I would end on a list, on a top 10, because, as I say, I in regards to wrestling, I come in and I go out, and I come in and I go out, and it's been really difficult over the last, say, 2 years to really invest myself in wrestling. There's AEW, there's Japan, there's all these wrestling things, but having the time, having the, I don't say patience, but patience is probably the best way to describe it. There's times when, I would rather watch Loki, or it's that horrible thing with wrestling where, it's a TV show. It has to face against the multitude of hours of stuff that's online and on Netflix and on YouTube and on everything else. So it's with a heavy heart that I would say that this is actually going to be the last spare change. Now, I may come back. I'm still writing reviews. I say it's a website called myreview.com, and you're quite happy to go there if you still want to hear my crazy reviews about films and TV and some wrestling as well. But to me, I have to tap out at this point, because I can't do much in regards to wrestling anymore. It just seems like there's so much going on. Not just obviously COVID and everything else. It just seems as though there's not a lot that I can there's only so many times I can smack my head at people doing the wrong things, and Vince McMahon doing stupid things, and Shane and Stephanie and Triple H and whoever it is, AEW, pushing the wrong people or pushing the right people even. AEW is a glimmer of hope. My worry is that Tony Khan will turn into Eric Bischoff. That's my biggest worry with him. That's the only real comment I would say in regard to AEW. I think NWA needs to get itself an actual TV show. It's great that it's on YouTube and it's free, but they need, here in the UK, I'm sure one of our companies would buy it up. I know they're on things like Fight Network for like their pay-per-view type shows. It's great to see Velvet Sky again, which is always good. But again, it's a very strange show to watch, and I find it really hard to invest myself into wrestling at this point. It's been a great journey. I've done quite a lot of stuff with wrestling audio. I've been able to meet people from like THQ when they were doing the wrestling games and go through all things like that. At one point, I was able to go to a live show and actually meet Kane. So for someone who's 5'5", it's very nice to meet someone who's over 7 foot and making you feel even shorter. But I've been able to, meet, I'd honestly take a picture of Hornswoggle. I remember him not being happy at me doing that. But so I have had some really great moments. I've enjoyed, the people I've interacted with. This isn't a goodbye. This is a see you in a couple of years when WWE or AEW or whoever it is gets their act back together and makes a TV show that is actually worth watching. And I don't know whether that's actually going to be the case. But hopefully hopefully I can come back. I'll always contribute to the predictions and thoughts and opinions. I'll always be obviously following the site and things like that. I just think, as I say, this is just a time for me to take a step back, reflect on everything. We've all had our hard times the last couple of years, and I just feel that this is my time, as I say, to tap out, to submit, ring the bell, and then walk out into the sunset with my arm held up like the Undertaker. So I'd like to thank everyone on the site. I'd like to thank Mo, Greg, Balls, um, I was going to say Lindsay, I won't say Devon, but anyone who's been involved in the site the last, it's been over 10 years. That's it's been a remarkable journey, and I do obviously thank everyone for it. If if the right conditions come along, if life, the universe, and everything gets back to normal and everything like that, and I say I might consider bringing this back, coming back with a Road Warriors pop and appear out of nowhere. But I'm not sure whether that'll happen at this point. But thank you very much for listening. For the last time, thank you very much for listening to myself. My name's Dangerous Dave. If you want to have any comments, any thoughts, easiest way is on Twitter, DGS316, Wrestling World website, Facebook page. Please continue to follow. Obviously, I'll be continuing to watch things like Table Talk. They are very interesting, very great. It's great to see the guys doing things like that. So thank you very much for listening. My name's Dangerous Dave, and you've been listening to WrestlingAudio.com.